and welcome back to this channel. So today we're going to talk about Crossing the Bar by Lord Alfred Tennyson. So Lord Tennyson wrote Crossing the Bar in 1889. That's 3 years before he died. The poem describes his placid and accepting attitude toward death. Although he has written other works and poems, he requested that Crossing the Bar appear as the final poem in all the collections of his work. So we can say that Crossing the Bar is a metaphorical poem. Why metaphorical, you say? If you remember, metaphor is a figure of speech that makes a direct comparison between two things. So, what are the two things being compared in the poem? Well, the speaker compared the act of crossing the sandbar to dying. Tennyson uses the metaphor of a sandbar to describe the barrier between life and death. So, what is a sandbar? A sandbar is a land formation near a bay, a shore, or any area in the sea with lower levels of water. Probably, if you have been out in the beach, there will be some resorts who will offer you to a boat ride to be able to go to a sandbar. So these sandbars are submerged during high tides and resurface during low tide. All right. Therefore, to cross the sandbar is Tennyson's metaphorical way of talking about death. So why that particular metaphor? If you think about it, it actually makes perfect sense. Death is merely the crossing of another type of boundary or barrier. So when somebody dies, they leave the safe harbor of life and enter the vast unknown of afterlife or whatever that may be. Now let us read the first stanza. Sunset and evening star and one clear call for me. And may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. When we think of sunsets and evening stars, we think of the end of the day. Just like the sunrise symbolizes the start of the day and a new beginning, sunset represents the end of something, be it a long day or a person's life. So this might mean that the speaker's life is nearly over. So here you can imagine that the speaker is in a boat on the water at sunset and he is heading out to the sea because he hears the call. Traveling at sea symbolizes the journey from life to death. Metaphorically, it means he is somewhere between life and death. Now, what do you think is the speaker's attitude to death in this poem? Is he bummed, pumped, or somewhere in between? Yes, he feels his life is almost up and is not even scared. This poem is all about accepting and embracing death rather than fearing it. He just wishes to die quietly and gently, reassured by the knowledge that what comes next is a meeting with God. So when he says there is no moaning at the bar, he was expecting that there shouldn't be any sadness about his passing. Now let's proceed to stanza number two. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam. When that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. As what I've said, when he's called to sea, he hopes that there's no mourning, no crashing sound of waves hitting the sandbar, but instead, he wants a tide so full that it makes no sound and carries no sea foam. Because sandbars can be very dangerous for ships and sailing, especially if it's visible. Because if they resurface in low tides, they can do to ships pretty much what iceberg did to the Titanic. But good news, it was a safe travel for the speaker. He described it as a tide as moving seems asleep. So this means that when he dies, he wishes for smooth and peaceful sailing and not to hit the troublesome sandbar along the way. He wants to die peacefully. That's it. Now let's go to stanza number three. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. So we started the journey at the sunset. By the third stanza, it is already the evening. So the evening bell is the one that you hear from a church. It is the one that is being sounded to indicate that someone dies. So the phrase sunset and evening star of the first stanza is replaced by twilight and evening bell of this stanza. So it means time has passed by since the speaker began the poem and time is passing by as he speaks. So the evening and the sunset is also symbolic of the old age he is in. He is inching towards the inevitable. The evening bell is accompanied by the acknowledgement of what is to follow, darkness. And when he escapes into the darkness, the speaker hopes that nobody will cry or make a big, sappy showing of goodbye. He doesn't want any of that drama once he dies. He just wants to sleep away in the night. No muss, no fuzz, no awkward side hugs or cheek kisses. When he goes, he just wants to be gone. All right, so now let's go to the last stanza. For though from out are born of time and place, the flood may bear me far. I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. So while he might be headed into the darkness and living familiar space and time, he is headed to finally look up upon the face of his pilot. So who is this pilot? Our speaker's pilot, with a capital letter and all, is none other than God himself. Instead of a pilot of a boat, God has been the pilot of the speaker's life. And guess what? When the speaker finally crosses the bar and reaches the ocean, when he finally crosses over into death, we mean he'll come face to face with God in heaven. So really, it's not all that bad. Sure, he's headed into darkness, but at least God is at the other end of it. So what Tennis is really trying to say here is that if you relax a bit, that is as peaceful and easy as putting out to sea. Death is not the end, but a new beginning. The reference to the sunset suggests as much. The sun sets, but it always rises again. So, how can we relate the meaning of this poem to our personal experiences or other people's experiences? Well, at first, it may be hard to put ourselves in the speaker's shoes, especially because you're young and you're at the prime of your life. That could be far from your worries. But death doesn't always have to be physical. We may grieve because of a death of a loved one, including pets, the end of a relationship, including friendships, or changes in your way of life. And the point of the poem is that death, in any form, is not the end of life. A lousy chapter in your life doesn't mean the story has ended. In fact, every day is a beginning and a fresh start. So that's Crossing the Bar by Lord Alfred Tennyson. I hope I was able to help you get the meaning of the poem. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.